Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. Before we get started, please let me encourage you to open up to the correct part of the lesson. This is Unit 3, Lesson 2. In this particular part of the lesson, we're going to be looking at some iconic, famous Egyptian pharaohs who forever changed and shaped the world, and also, of course, ancient Egypt. But moreover, we're going to be analyzing when they ruled, what type of dynasty they were of, and what they're most known for, and how they impacted ancient Egyptian history and culture. So this, of course, is part 3 of Unit 2, Lesson 2. Before we get started, please let me also encourage you to follow along with the PDF reading, which is going to be conveyed to you on your screen right here. So just listen closely, and as you listen, you may go ahead and fill in the chart accordingly. Remember, you can replay any part of this presentation that you might need for detail or clarity. So let's go ahead and get started. These are the most famous Egyptian pharaohs. An Egyptian pharaoh was the leader of all of Egypt. The pharaoh served as the head of the government as well as a religious leader. The pharaoh ruled Upper and Lower Egypt too. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was considered a god. The word pharaoh means great house, referring to the royal status of the leader of Egypt. There were many pharaohs throughout ancient Egyptian history, including several famous pharaohs too. Menes. Menes was the first king of Egypt. He united Upper and Lower Egypt and created the first dynasty. Menes founded the city of Memphis, and while many historical texts mention Menes, some historians question his existence. Many historians think Menes was more of a legend or a story rather than an actual Egyptian king, but Menes means he who endures. If Menes did exist, historians think that he ruled anywhere from around 3000 BCE. Historians believe Menes was a hero story for ancient Egyptians. Sneferu was the first king of the fourth dynasty, ruled during the Old Kingdom, and Egyptians thought that he was a good and fair ruler. Historians believe that Sneferu's rule lasted about 24 years, and Sneferu conducted several military expeditions to gain raw materials and prisoners to build a labor force. Sneferu used his labor force for many building projects across Egypt, and Sneferu is most famous for building 3 building complexes. During Sneferu's reign, pyramids evolved from step pyramids to true pyramids. The pyramids built by Sneferu showed how Egyptians were learning how to build pyramids. What the builders learned from Sneferu's projects that they were able to construct later pyramids. And Egyptologists, or people who study ancient Egypt, have not yet discovered Sneferu's body. Many of the Old Kingdom tombs are below the water table, making it difficult to excavate Old Kingdom sites. Khufu. Khufu was the son of Sneferu, and he inherited the throne from his father. Khufu is famous for having built the Great Pyramid of Giza. Khufu ruled from anywhere from 2589 BCE to 2566 BCE. The Greeks gave Khufu the name Cheops, and he is also known throughout history by that name. Khufu had 9 sons and 15 daughters, all whom he gave jobs in government. The Great Pyramid of Giza, also known as the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Khufu had the Great Pyramid built during his reign, and the Great Pyramid is one of the 7 wonders of the world. Archaeologists found Khufu's sarcophagus, or stone coffin, in the Great Pyramid, but his remains were never found. Also found inside the Great Pyramid were funeral boats meant to help carry the pharaoh to the afterlife. The Egyptians sealed Khufu's boat inside the Great Pyramid to symbolically take him into the afterlife. Just one statue exists of Khufu, and it is the only 3 inches tall. Amenhotep III. So Amenhotep III ruled during the New Kingdom of Egypt, and he was the 9th king of the 18th dynasty. Amenhotep was the grandfather of King Tut, and Amenhotep III ruled from 1391 BCE to 1352 BCE. He became pharaoh when he was only 12 years old, and Amenhotep was famous for his ability to keep the peace in ancient Egypt. Because his reign was so peaceful, Amenhotep III was able to focus on developing the arts in his Egypt. Amenhotep III built many monuments during his rule of Egypt as well, and this included many monuments to himself and the Egyptian gods. There were more statues of Amenhotep discovered than any other Egyptian pharaoh. Amenhotep III was also known for repairing Egypt's roads. This made it easier for merchants to bring their goods to the market on better roadways, which helped the Egyptian economy. Amenhotep suffered dental problems later in life, and historians believe that he may have died from complications of a tooth infection. He died around 1353 BCE, and the Egyptians buried him in the Valley of the Kings. Akhenaten. Akhenaten was the son and heir of Amenhotep III. The New Kingdom in ancient Egypt was its peak of success when Akhenaten became pharaoh. Akhenaten was born Amenhotep, but changed his name during the 5th year as the pharaoh. Historians believe that he changed his name due to differing religious beliefs. Akhenaten is famous for drastically changing the religious beliefs of ancient Egypt. Under Akhenaten, Egypt shifted from a polytheistic society, believing in many gods, to a monotheistic society. Under Akhenaten, Egypt would only worship one god, the sun god Aten. Akhenaten means the living spirit of Aten. So Akhenaten closed down many old Egyptian temples dedicated to other gods, and he also built new temples dedicated to Aten. Akhenaten's wife, Nefertiti, ruled beside him, and the Egyptians considered Nefertiti the most beautiful woman in the world. A famous sculpture exists today of Nefertiti, and the famous Egyptian artist Thutmose completed Nefertiti's statue. During Akhenaten's time as pharaoh, Egyptian art became more realistic, and artists created images of people as they truly looked rather than their ideal or perfect form. Akhenaten died around 1336 BCE. Shortly after his death, Egypt returned to their traditional religions, worshipping many gods, and many Egyptians were not happy with the religious changes Akhenaten introduced. Tutankhamun. So, Tutankhamun was the son of Akhenaten. He did not take the throne immediately from his father. Historians believe two other pharaohs ruled in between Akhenaten and Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun was the son of one of the Akhenaten's lesser wives, and his father died when he was only 7 years old. Tutankhamun was not happy with all the changes his father made during his time as the pharaoh, so he worked during his reign to fix many of the problems in Egypt created by his father. Tutankhamun, also known as King Tut, died when he was only 19 years old. Historians believe that he suffered a broken leg and became infected. We know more about his death because archaeologists found King Tut's remains intact inside a coffin or sarcophagus. Archaeologists discovered his remains in 1922. Tutankhamun is one of the best-known pharaohs of ancient Egypt because scientists and historians could examine his body and tomb better than other pharaohs. The Egyptians buried Tutankhamun in the Valley of the Kings, and King Tut had no surviving children. His military advisor became pharaoh after his death. Ramses II. Ramses II ruled in Egypt from 1279 BCE to 1213 BCE. Ramses II's father became pharaoh when Ramses was 5 years old. He grew up in a royal court, learning how to be a leader from his father. Ramses became the third pharaoh in the 19th dynasty when he was 25 years old after the death of his father. Ramses led his military on many campaigns or military expeditions, and Ramses II wanted to expand Egyptian territory and protect Egypt from enemies. Egyptians saw Ramses II as a great military leader. He was also known as a great builder. During his time as the pharaoh, Ramses II built many Egyptian temples and monuments. Ramses II also built new temples and monuments as well. Ramses II died at the age of 90 years old, and of course he was buried in the Valley of the Kings. His mummy is currently in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, Egypt. Thutmose III. Thutmose III ruled Egypt from 1479 BCE to 1425 BCE, and Thutmose III was 3 years old when his father, the pharaoh, died. Since he was so young, Thutmose's aunt helped him rule, and she eventually gained enough power to claim the title of pharaoh herself. While she ruled, Thutmose III became a powerful military leader, and when his aunt died, Thutmose III took the position of pharaoh. Almost immediately, Thutmose III faced a rebellion. His military experience during his aunt's reign helped him to quickly stop the uprising and bring back Egypt under his control. Writings discovered by historians claim that Thutmose had over 50 temples built in Egypt during his time as the pharaoh, and there are no records in existence that show Thutmose III losing a battle. Thutmose III died around 1425 BCE, and he was buried in the Valley of the Kings. Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut was one of the most powerful female pharaohs in Egyptian history. She grew up with a brother and two sisters, all of whom died. Hatshepsut was an only child with her father, Thutmose I died. Thutmose II, Hatshepsut's husband and stepbrother, became pharaoh when her father died, and Thutmose II was not a healthy pharaoh, and he died only a few years after becoming pharaoh. The only male heir to the throne was Thutmose III, and Hatshepsut's 3-year-old nephew. She would serve as an adult regent to help him rule. After a few years as regent, Hatshepsut had herself named pharaoh, and she was a strong leader with a lot of support from the Egyptian people. Hatshepsut did not bring Egypt to war during her 20 years as the pharaoh, and to make Egypt secure and prosperous, she developed trade relationships with outside civilizations. One of the greatest achievements of Egyptian architecture is the Temple of Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut had the temple built as her mortuary temple, and Egyptians created mortuary temples to honor a pharaoh after their death. Historians believe that Thutmose III may have assassinated Hatshepsut to become pharaoh himself, but Hatshepsut died after 22 years as the pharaoh of Egypt. Djoser. Djoser was a pharaoh during the Third Dynasty of the Old Kingdom, and historians are unsure of the dates of his reign, but they believe that he ruled for between 19 and 28 years old. During his time as the pharaoh, he helped make Egypt wealthier through mining, and Egypt was able to mine turquoise and copper during Djoser's time as pharaoh. Djoser has helped control the kingdom by sending out military troops to the outlying areas of Egypt, and these military expeditions helped to maintain Egypt's territory and power. Djoser is well known for many construction projects that started during his time as the pharaoh. The very first pyramid built in ancient Egypt is the Step Pyramid of Djoser, and Djoser had the pyramid built for his burial. Djoser's advisor, Amenhotep, built the Step Pyramid of Djoser. And Amenhotep became the world's first architect. Djoser began the Egyptian tradition of pyramid building, and Djoser is also known for famously ending a 7-year-long famine in Egypt too. The legend or story claims that once Djoser had a temple built to the Egyptian god Khnum, the famine ended. After his death and burial in his pyramid, robbers stole Djoser's mummified body, and archaeologists only found the left foot of Djoser's remains in his burial tomb. And there you guys have it, a brief synopsis and overview of some of the most iconic and important pharaohs of ancient Egypt. Think about it like this before you finish the chart. The main reason why we study pharaohs is not just to look at the minute specifics and details of what they did do, but what they contributed to the overarching story of the civilizations that they represent. In this case, these pharaohs did a lot and have different and unique characteristics that set them apart from each other. Thank you very much for listening, and good luck on filling in the rest of your chart and completing the rest of the assignment.